Hi, my name is Dana Weaver. Welcome to my channel, Seed of Fire, and thank you for tuning in. The purpose of this channel is to explain how I went from Democratic Party activist to Republican committeewoman over the last few years. But I feel like before I can show you the road I took, I sort of need to explain where I began. And that's the purpose of this video. This video has two parts. The first part is personal. It's about where I was mindset-wise immediately preceding and immediately after the 2016 election. I've already told you that I cried myself to sleep, but there was a bit more to it than that. The second part of the video is more academic and explores the reasons why I was in that mindset and what I did to break free of it. Leading up to the 2016 election, I was afraid of Trump winning, but I wasn't actually worried about it, if that makes sense. In fact, I thought it was much more likely that he might lose and refuse to concede. That might sound crazy, but I want to stress that this was not a fringe view. This was an idea that was in the mainstream discourse and trumpeted by the mainstream media. A month before the election, a Washington Post headline declared, "Donald Trump is setting the stage to never concede the 2016 election." The New York Times asked, if Donald Trump lost, would he concede? NBC asked, what happens if Donald Trump loses and won't concede? Politico asked, what if Donald Trump won't accept defeat? Bloomberg News reported that the Clinton campaign was preparing for a scenario in which Donald Trump would not concede.
Okay, the Associated Press is now reporting that Hillary Clinton's campaign is preparing for a scenario in which Donald Trump refuses to concede the presidential election if he loses next month. I should say when he loses next month.
This was a debate question. This may seem like overkill, but it's easy to forget what things were like before the 2016 election. Pretty much everyone I knew agreed that the idea of a Trump presidency was terrifying, but nobody was really worried about it, which is probably why I only got 2 people to show up to my Clinton phone bank in a county that went 75% for Clinton. Donald Trump's win was shocking. It sent me into a version of reality that I didn't even think was possible a day before. It wasn't just a version of reality I didn't think was possible. It was this dark, dystopian version of reality with an uncertain future. Donald Trump's win marked the first time in my life I was afraid of my government rather than just disgusted by it. I was a ball of anxiety, and I wasn't alone. You may have heard the terms Trump anxiety disorder, post-election stress disorder, or simply Trump anxiety. Psychologists reported patients with trouble sleeping, trouble focusing at work, fighting with family members, feeling as though they're in mourning, and even blowing through stop signs and getting into fender benders. I actually experienced a number of these symptoms following the 2016 election. It was a dark and difficult period in my life. In addition to the negative emotions that I felt, which I've discussed in the other video of fear, outrage, and despair, I was completely overwhelmed by information. And I still suffer from this to a degree, as I suspect we all do in the age of information, but immediately following the 2016 election, it was unrelenting. Leading up to and following the election, I was consuming massive amounts of information from news outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN. I was also listening to podcasts by those same corporations, and anytime I was in the car, I had NPR on. And I felt overwhelmed by this, but I thought it was my duty to stay apprised of current events because our country was in such a tumultuous time. In addition to that, Facebook was critical for political organizing, and so I ended up spending a ton of time on Facebook too. 6 days after the inauguration, I wrote this panicked email to my email list. Looking back now at the words I used then, avalanche, scary, destruction, siege, war, it reminds me of how intensely afraid I was. My fear was genuine and deeply felt. Today, with the benefit of hindsight and passage of time, I can see that my fear and my despair were out of proportion with reality. In addition, my outrage was displaced. Why? I was trapped in a filter bubble. The term filter bubble peaked right after the 2016 election. The shocking nature of the outcome got people thinking about and the media writing about filter bubbles. But then it just kind of faded from public consciousness. We should revisit the issue. It's important. And that brings us to part 2 of this video. One of the challenges I had in making this video was conveying my 2016 mindset to you without having a word for the experience. It's so much easier to share an experience with someone when that experience has a name. So I considered a number of names for my post-2016 election mindset. I considered the post-election stress disorder and the Trump anxiety disorder. I even considered Trump derangement syndrome, but none of them fit for various reasons. I finally settled on the accurate but boring D-FID, Default Filter Information Disorder, which I define as a distorted view of reality arising from a person's inability to access and/or consider information from diverse sources outside the default filter bubble. This definition probably doesn't make sense right now, but it will be perfectly clear in 2 minutes. We all use information filters to help us get information we want and keep out information we don't want. We have no choice but to use filters to sort through the vast amounts of information available to us. Our information filters help shape our world perspective by determining what information we receive and the context with which we receive it. Consequently, our filters directly shape what we perceive as truth and what we perceive as reality. Despite their importance, most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about our information filters. We just use the default ones. So what are the default filters? The default filters are the best known and most popular filters. I think of them as the internet starter pack. These are the filters that an alien new to Earth would use to navigate the internet. They are primarily well-established, publicly traded corporations or tools of such corporations. They include large media corporations, legacy news outlets, popular idea-sharing platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit, and, most importantly, the default search engine, Google. Please never become evil. Note that the primary function of the filters is to filter information. That's what they do for us. But their primary purpose is to help the corporation make a profit. That's what they do for the people who own them. Thus, the filter's interest in providing us with accurate and truthful information extends only so far as providing us with accurate and truthful information aligns with the profit motive. Collectively, the default filters control most of the information people get about the world. Consequently, if these filters start passing along bad, incomplete, or biased information, then a good chunk of the population is going to be learning bad, incomplete, or biased information. People in the default filter bubble may never even learn that contradictory information exists because it doesn't get past the filters. Eventually, this creates an echo chamber, isolated from other worldviews. Now, as it turns out, echo chambers on the internet are a dime a dozen. The thing that makes the default filter bubble echo chamber so important is the fact that it includes a disproportionate amount of powerful and influential people, resulting in significant real-life consequences. The default filter bubble includes a disproportionate amount of political leaders, journalists, celebrities, tech leaders, academics, public intellectuals, attorneys, and political commentators. In other words, many of the most visible, influential, and powerful people in our society are afflicted with D-FID, a distorted view of reality arising from a person's inability or unwillingness to access and/or consider information from diverse sources outside the default filter bubble. So how do you cure it? How do you convince smart, well-educated, and successful people that they're in an echo chamber? Well, you're not going to convince someone they're in an echo chamber by telling them they're in an echo chamber. They're not going to believe you. And more than that, they might think that you're the one in the echo chamber, and they could be right about that. You could both be in echo chambers. In addition, even if somebody's a little iffy on the information they're getting, they're still going to trust that information over information that contradicts their worldview. You see, the problem is that small questions and small revelations lead to big questions and bigger revelations quickly and sometimes abruptly. We've learned to stop pursuing little questions that can result in cognitive dissonance or push us down a rabbit hole we're not ready for. For example, if you start asking yourself, how do I know that the anonymous source in this New York Times article is credible? You might soon be asking yourself, how do I know that the anonymous sources in all those other New York Times articles are credible? And then before you know it, you're like, oh God, what's reality? Okay, there might be a couple of steps between those, but not as many as you'd think. So we avoid cognitive dissonance. We don't ask those questions so we don't get pushed down a rabbit hole we're not ready to pursue. At the end of the day, the only cure for any echo chamber is for the person inside of it to make an affirmative decision to change out their filters. If you suspect you could be in an echo chamber, you should certainly do this, but really we should all be doing it anyway. It's basic mental hygiene. If you've made it to the end of this video, then you're at my rabbit hole with me. Welcome. If you'd like to go down it, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button. The bell button's important because I'm going to be releasing videos irregularly, and the bell button will make sure that you're notified when I put the next one out. I hope to have the next video out in somewhere between 7 and 10 days. I'm between 2 videos. I'm not sure which one to do yet, so it'll be fun either way. Thanks for listening.